So yeah, I'm Stacy and I have been in Bitcoin since 2020. I don't have financial background. I am a hairdresser and I just started to think about that question, what is money, during the pandemic, when you started to wonder about stimulus checks in the US. We were receiving these stimulus checks and that got me thinking, how many more of these could we receive? Is there some sort of limit? And I remember, I forgot his name. I don't know if it was Noah, but at the time, the Federal Reserve, he wasn't the chair, but he was one of the Federal Reserve workers. And he had a video saying that there's an unlimited supply of money that could be printed at the Federal Reserve. And that was my orange pill moment. My one cousin was the one telling me about Bitcoin, and I kept ignoring him for a long time. But when I heard that, I reached back out to him and he just explained to me that my savings or anybody's savings reduces purchasing power over the years, the more money that is printed. So this is something that can't stop. And if it does slow down too much or stop, it could result in a catastrophic global collapse, like economic collapse. So this is something that will continue because it has to. And in that case, Bitcoin will always go up because all this fiat in the world just floods into markets afterwards, including Bitcoin. So that was an eye-opening moment for me. So I got into it in 2020. And, me and my husband are both very into Bitcoin. We got a little bit sucked into the whole altcoin frenzy, I guess, that was going on back then. But I still understood the root problem of money. But then I started to realize more how Bitcoin is different and it's not like any other cryptocurrency. So, my main discussion with people when they ask me, even about my podcast and why I talk about Bitcoin, I love to distinguish that Bitcoin is different and it is the only system that doesn't have a ruler, and the rules of the game cannot be changed. So every other system, the fiat system, cryptocurrencies of any kind, there's always some kind of, CEO or group of people behind it that can change the rules tomorrow. And I think that that's a really interesting argument when people from other cryptocurrencies online will say things like, well, our coin is proof of work, just like Bitcoin was when it started. Yeah, for now, until somebody decides to change the rules, because it's not, Bitcoin just grew differently and nobody can change the rules now. But every other coin doesn't have that same grassroots movement. And, it's not growing under the radar like Bitcoin did for so long. So it can't really be replicated. So I like to just explain that to people.
Yeah, I get it so much with like, oh, this coin is faster than Bitcoin. Yeah, might be fast on the main layer, but like, you still need the decentralization, because you know what's the fastest? Like, if you tell me something and I write it down on paper or like on an Excel sheet, that's super fast transaction. Like if you have an Excel sheet and I have like two names in there, Stacy, Robin, and I just delete one from Stacy and put the one in Robin, that's super freaking fast. I can automate that to work within a millisecond. And that's definitely faster than 10 minutes on Bitcoin. But my Excel sheet probably won't take over the financial system. Bitcoin might, because it's decentralized, trustless, and all those other things. So it's interesting how the altcoin and the crypto people kind of focus on like one single small aspect, and it's like, oh, that's a small aspect, that's where my coin is better, and that's why it's deserves market cap higher than Bitcoin. I'm like, zoom out and see the bigger picture, and then you see why you didn't get the better Bitcoin. You got not even a close to anything like Bitcoin. You just got an Excel sheet and glorious Excel sheet that you just programmed on a blockchain.
Yeah, and it's not going to take over Bitcoin. It's, if anything, I like to think that people practice on other chains. They like to, it's, I think of it as a playground, like people play around on these other chains. And when something does seem to work, that could get implemented on a second layer of Bitcoin. Because, ultimately, I think everything will be built on Bitcoin. Other chains are just practice, so I don't think anything will last for the long run. It's just Bitcoin as the main event. So everything will just eventually move over to um, the strongest chain and the most trusted chain, and the one that can't be altered or changed. It's immutable, and that's what makes it so powerful. So as much as people believe that it is proof of work like Bitcoin was, I like to point out that even Ethereum was proof of work initially, and then the rules were changed and it's now proof of stake. So just because you think it is something doesn't mean that it can't be altered. Bitcoin can't be altered. So I love that. And yeah, things being built on top of Bitcoin is the way I see it going in the future. So I don't see any argument there. I feel like it's hard to have any sort of comeback when you bring up just those ideas.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Saifedean mentioned that once in an interview, and I found it so fascinating that even if we assume altcoins actually have some use case and some nice things, at best they are a working company where they have a product and service they provide. And for any working company, the maximum you can achieve in today's dollars terms, so without inflation rate, they could maybe achieve a 1 trillion, 2 trillion, maybe a $4 trillion market cap, which would be insane. $4 trillion is now twice as Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is going after a $500 trillion market, and that's like more than 10x than what that's actually more than all. That's more than 100x from the total addressable market that, for example, an altcoin could reach if they would provide something valuable, which I
Yeah.
question. I don't think any of the altcoins do provide anything valuable. So I think they all go to zero. But even if we say they are providing something valuable, the opportunity of those are so much smaller than Bitcoin because they're not going after store of value, money, the currency aspect. They're going after like a product or service. And a company might grow to 2 trillion, 3 trillion market cap, but Bitcoin might grow to 400 trillion, 500 trillion. And
Exactly.
I think that's what people really don't get, what that Bitcoin's opportunity is way bigger than it's a little bit bigger than Apple.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People focus too much on the fact that they think that they're too late to Bitcoin, and everybody that's ever bought Bitcoin thinks that they were too late to Bitcoin. Like everyone that's ever bought it, I don't think anyone bought it and thought I got in early. Like everyone thinks they bought too high because they should have bought sooner because it's grown so fast over the years. But you're not late to Bitcoin. So, like we are at 98% of the supply that's already out in circulation, and the next 10 years will take, it'll be the last 1% or one of the percentages. The last percent will take 100 more years. So we're dwindling. Like whatever is going to be released is getting so exponentially smaller until the year 2140 that we're still so early. And then combined with the fact that there's only about 2 million coins on exchanges, and there's so much adoption from governments and corporations, and it's literally like just the beginning. Like this seems high for people and they get scared by $100,000 Bitcoin. They think, oh, well, that crypto thing I missed out on. This is just the beginning. So that's just where people are wrong. Um, and I just like to, it's hard for people to understand exponential growth. And we're just still so early in this adoption curve.
Do you believe in this supply shock theory that we hit this point and where we completely shoot up because there's literally no more supply, or will the price always regulate to a certain extent?
I think that it's how I believe is just how you see the S curves growing with technology, and every technology growing faster than the one before it, and how Bitcoin is growing faster than the internet did as far as adoption. I think we're just entering that S curve of global adoption. So I think as far as the supply, there will always be a supply of Bitcoin because there will always be a price that somebody needs to sell their Bitcoin for in order to live. So even if people start to believe, okay, and they understand that you don't trade Bitcoin over time and you just hold it, but people do eventually need to spend something in real life. So even if they're just living off of it and they're not just fully selling their entire stash, they still have to recirculate some of those coins back into the supply. So there's always a price, I think. So at some point, even if when it hits $1 million, which I believe it could be in the next 1 to 3 years or something, it's possible. But there's going to be people that are going to sell into that market because they have enough where they can take a little bit off if they're not even selling their entire amount. So it's a redistribution of wealth. That's what I think of it as. So there will always be a circulating supply. There will always be coins, I think, there just at a much higher price. And that's when, the people that, as the market cap grows, these big companies sometimes think they can invest giant amounts of money because it's not a big enough market cap. But as it grows that much, then all this huge amount of capital can flow into the market as well. But they'll be buying at a much higher price. So, and yeah, so I just think it's going to be constantly redistributed. It's going to be like a circular thing. So I don't think we're going to ever experience total supply shock where there's going to be none, but definitely you're going to be buying sats. Like, people will be not thinking of it as Bitcoins. You're going to be thinking of it as sats and more than Bitcoin. And those sats will be worth so much more.
I like that. And it's also interesting because you work as an hairdresser. And when I think about when I'm at the hairdresser, now I have a Bitcoiner that actually does the hair. And I always try to get him at conferences because he is at the conference. And then before conferences, my hair grow long. And right now I wasn't at a conference since some time. And I hope I get to him in time before I look like shit. But I always, even before that, I always talked a lot with my hairdresser. It's like it's a weird connection that you sit there for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe longer, depending on what you do with your hair. And I mostly had good conversations, depending on the hairdresser, but like mostly had good conversations. And you hear from all walks of life. There can be a single mom coming in. There can be a successful businessman coming in. There's like all like, you don't know who's coming on your chair and what inputs you get from him. So I feel like hairdressers, almost like you have so many different people from so many different walks of life just walking in and getting a feel for the environment, for the people, of what's going on in that local community. Are you, before I ask the question, are you talking with them about Bitcoin? Do you get a feel what kind of the Bitcoin adoption is with them?
Yes. So I feel I talk about it constantly with my clients, and I spend a lot. I do men's hair too, but I do a lot more women's hair, and I spend much more time with women than I do with men, sometimes 2 hours at a time with most women on average. So there's plenty of time to discuss what's going on in the world. And the topic that comes up most frequently is how expensive things have gotten, and how, women are always, they used to always talk about all the parties they're going to, and just all the fun stuff they're doing. They used to always go out to dinner and do all these fun things. And lately it's just, I always would ask people, what are you doing this weekend? Do you have any plans? What's been going on since I last saw you? Everyone's pretty much like, not too much. I'm not taking vacations this year. I have no plans this weekend. It's so much less of the excitement and people getting together than there used to be. And then we get into the topic of, it's just too expensive to go out. Groceries are so high, and it's an easy transition into what's wrong with the world. So I do bring up Bitcoin, and sometimes they'll ask me, well, what is Bitcoin? I'm like, okay, first of all, do you want me to get started? Because once I start talking, I'm like, please, like, let me know if you're getting lost at any point, because I will just talk for the rest of our appointment about it. And I usually stop halfway in between and I ask them, I'm sorry, is this too much? And they're like, no, I actually am learning something. Thank you so much for telling me this, because I had no idea. I never ask what money is. I never think about there being an answer to this inflation. They really, I try to, teach them about how when Bitcoin came out, how it's never been hacked. People are under this assumption that cryptocurrency is Bitcoin, and it's not the same. And I distinguish that for them right away. And when they hear bad news about exchanges or things that have gone under, people losing their coins, I tell them that the truth, that people lost their coins early on because they tried to store it in a hardware wallet and they didn't protect that seed phrase, not knowing that this thing would grow like it has over all these years. So now people understand more the value of it. They're not going to be careless with their seed phrase. And I explain to them what that is. And I usually just tell people to start off, with an exchange, just buy the Bitcoin first, then I'm like, I can teach you. I'm like, once you buy the Bitcoin, just come back and I'll show you how to transfer it to a hardware wallet. I'm like, it's so easy. I'm like, if you know how to use a QR code, you know how to transfer Bitcoin. Like I try to be very simple with them. I do talk a lot about it, but more about the problems in the world versus the Bitcoin technological aspect the whole time. It's just more about how, political parties constantly, both sides, Democrat, Republican, just print money. And just the root cause of the problem is what gets them to kind of see it. So I have many clients that are thankful that they had no idea about this. Sometimes I feel repetitive. And sometimes I feel that when I talk to some of these people that literally have no clue and I tell them I have a podcast, they want to know about my channel. So I share my channel with them. And a lot of times they come back saying that they've been listening to it and they really are learning a lot. But starting from a point where people know nothing, I hear a lot of people just asking me for videos, just explaining Bitcoin from a base level. So I want to try to start doing that, just to create some videos for super beginners that have no idea what Bitcoin is, for people like that, for people like them who are completely new to my channel and know nothing. So once um, they can see some beginner videos and then maybe understand more of my journeys from a lot of my guests afterwards.
Do you see people coming in your store and already getting Bitcoin is without talking to you first, like someone new coming in and saying like, oh, like I already know about it and he actually understands it?
I think maybe a handful. Like I have a handful of people who have it, understand it, not very many. They're men. The ones that I do talk about it with, I don't have any women yet that have said that they get Bitcoin. If it is a woman, they're like, my husband or my son has it. I'm going to share my channel, or they're going to share my channel with them because they're into Bitcoin. So it's usually the men. And I did have one client I was so happy about because he's an older man and he's retired and he has a 401k and a pension and all this stuff. And I shared my video with Lawrence Lepard with him. And you never know sometimes if it really clicks with people or not, but he was asking questions. So I shared stuff with him, and um, I didn't go crazy and talk too much that day, but he came in another time and told me that he was so happy. He looked like he had this like light in his eyes, like he was so fired up. And he didn't go buy Bitcoin on an exchange, which I totally understand. But what he did do is take his account from Fidelity that he had and he transferred everything over to Bitcoin treasury companies, literally his entire 401k. And he was so happy about it. He was like so proud to tell me that he switched everything over. And the reason he did that and didn't just go buy Bitcoin directly, which is a good point to make for people who are against Bitcoin treasury companies, because I'd rather get straight Bitcoin because that's the way you actually own your energy and your time that you put into working, and you can be your own bank when you self custody it. But with him, if you have all your money over the years working in a traditional system, if you were to pull that money and pay 40% tax on it and then go buy Bitcoin, they've lived in this system their entire life. Their money's already in this system. So for them, it doesn't make sense to take a 40% tax hit. It makes sense for them to transfer over to a Bitcoin treasury company. So I think those companies can be important for people who already have so much of their capital in the traditional finance system, and they could just move over to a Bitcoin treasury company, which will actually accumulate more Bitcoin over time, and they'll see their portfolio grow much more than leaving it in traditional stocks.
Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.